Long before Rome rose and Alexander conquered, there stood a mighty empire that stretched from the shores of the Aegean to the mountains of India. The Persian Empire, a civilization of breathtaking ambition, unmatched wealth, and astonishing innovation. Under visionary rulers like Cyrus the Great and Darius the First, Persia became a symbol of power, tolerance, and imperial brilliance. But even the greatest empires are not immune to time, betrayal, and the ambitions of their enemies. In today's video, we explore the dramatic rise and inevitable fall of one of history's most influential empires, the glory, the battles, the legends. This is the story of the Persian Empire. In the arid expanse of ancient Persis, where rugged mountains cradle fertile valleys, a new power began to stir. The year was 550 BCE, and Cyrus the Great, a visionary leader whose name would echo through millennia, stood poised to transform his modest kingdom into an empire that would redefine the known world. Born into the royal house of Achaemenus, Cyrus inherited not just a throne, but a legacy, a lineage intertwined with the dreams of expansion and unification. His rise was neither abrupt nor accidental. It was the culmination of strategic brilliance, military prowess, and an unparalleled ability to inspire loyalty among diverse peoples. The early days of the Persian Empire were marked by a series of decisive victories that cemented Cyrus's reputation as a conqueror. Unlike any other, his first major triumph came with the defeat of the Median Empire, a dominant force in the region ruled by his own grandfather, Astyages. This victory was not merely a familial coup but a calculated move to consolidate power and resources. Cyrus's army, composed of skilled archers, disciplined infantry, and innovative cavalry units, showcased a level of coordination and adaptability that left his adversaries bewildered. The fall of the Medes set the stage for further conquests, as neighboring states watched with a mix of awe and trepidation. Central to Cyrus's success was his unique approach to governance. Unlike many rulers of his time, who relied on fear and subjugation to maintain control, Cyrus adopted a policy of tolerance and inclusion. He understood that an empire built solely on coercion was inherently unstable. Instead, he granted conquered peoples autonomy in their cultural and religious practices, earning their goodwill and ensuring smoother integration into the burgeoning empire. This philosophy was epitomized in his treatment of the Babylonians, whom he liberated from the oppressive rule of Nabonidus. Upon entering Babylon in 5349 BCE, Cyrus declared himself a restorer of order and justice, an act immortalized in the Cyrus Cylinder, a document often hailed as the world's first charter of human rights. Geographically, the Persian Empire expanded rapidly under Cyrus's leadership, stretching from the Indus Valley in the east to the shores of the Aegean Sea in the west. It became the largest empire the world had ever seen. The fertile plains of Mesopotamia, the mineral-rich regions of Anatolia, and the strategic trade routes of Central Asia all fell under Persian dominion. Each new acquisition brought not only wealth but also diversity, as Cyrus welcomed artisans, scholars, and merchants from across his realm. This melting pot of cultures fostered innovation and prosperity, laying the foundation for an empire that would endure for centuries. Cyrus's vision extended beyond mere territorial conquest. He sought to create a cohesive and interconnected state, one where roads facilitated communication and commerce, where standardized weights and measures simplified trade, and where a common administrative system ensured efficiency. The Royal Road, stretching over 1,600 miles from Sardis to Susa, exemplified this ambition. It was more than a highway. It was a symbol of unity, linking distant provinces to the imperial heartland and enabling the swift movement of armies, messengers, and goods. As Cyrus consolidated his power, he faced challenges that tested his resolve and ingenuity. Rebellions erupted intermittently, fueled by resentment or opportunism, yet none succeeded in toppling his regime. His ability to anticipate threats and respond decisively earned him the loyalty of his generals and the respect of his enemies. Even the famed Greek historian Herodotus, writing decades later, marveled at Cyrus's achievements, describing him as the most admirable of all rulers. By the time of his death in 53 BCE, Cyrus had transformed Persis into a sprawling empire that commanded respect and admiration across continents. His legacy was not just in the lands he conquered, but in the principles he championed, principles that would shape the course of history. Though his reign ended, the empire he founded endured, setting the stage for future leaders to build upon his monumental achievements. The Persian Empire had risen, and its story was only beginning. Following the untimely demise of Cambyses II, the Persian Empire found itself in a precarious position, teetering on the brink of chaos. It was during this tumultuous period that Darius I, known as Darius the Great, ascended to the throne in 512 BC. His rise was not without contention, as he had to quell numerous revolts and secure his claim amidst a sea of pretenders. However, once established, Darius proved to be a ruler of extraordinary vision and capability, ushering in an era of unprecedented stability and growth. Darius's primary challenge was to unify the vast territories under Persian control, which were culturally and geographically diverse. To achieve this, he introduced a series of administrative reforms that revolutionized governance within the empire. One of his most significant contributions was the division of the empire into 20 satrapas, each governed by a satrap appointed directly by him. These satraps were responsible for maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, and overseeing local affairs. Yet they remained answerable to the central authority. This hierarchical structure ensured both accountability and efficiency, significantly reducing the likelihood of rebellion and enhancing the empire's cohesion. Moreover, Darius implemented a standardized currency system throughout the empire, which facilitated trade and economic activity. The introduction of the daric, a gold coin, provided a uniform medium of exchange that bolstered commerce between different regions. This financial reform not only stabilized the economy but also increased the empire's wealth, allowing for further investments in infrastructure and defense. In addition to administrative and economic reforms, Darius undertook ambitious architectural projects that symbolized the might and sophistication of the Persian Empire. The construction of Persepolis, intended to be the ceremonial capital, stands as a testament to his grand vision. Designed to impress foreign dignitaries and showcase Persian artistry and engineering, Persepolis featured massive stone structures adorned with intricate reliefs depicting scenes of tribute and celebration. The city served as a physical embodiment of the empire's unity and prosperity, drawing visitors from across the known world. Under Darius's rule, the Persian Empire reached its zenith, expanding its borders to include parts of Greece, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. His military campaigns were meticulously planned and executed, often leveraging the empire's superior logistics and intelligence networks. The construction of additional segments of the royal road further enhanced communication and troop movements, solidifying the empire's defensive and offensive capabilities. Darius's ability to integrate newly acquired territories into the existing administrative framework allowed for seamless expansion without compromising stability. Darius's reign also saw significant advancements in legal and cultural spheres. He codified laws that protected property rights and promoted fair trade practices, which fostered an environment conducive to economic development. Furthermore, his policies encouraged cultural exchange and intellectual pursuits, attracting scholars and artists from various corners of the empire. This cosmopolitan atmosphere enriched Persian society and contributed to its reputation as a beacon of civilization. However, Darius's ambitions were not without challenges. The Greco-Persian Wars, particularly the famous Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, highlighted the limitations of Persian military might against the determined resistance of the Greek city-state. Despite these setbacks, Darius's legacy as a builder and consolidator of the empire remained intact. His reforms laid the groundwork for future prosperity, ensuring that the Persian Empire would continue to thrive long after his death in 4086 BCE. Thus, Darius the Great emerged as a pivotal figure in the annals of Persian history, remembered for his astute governance, expansive vision, and enduring contributions to the empire's golden age. His era marked a high point in Persian dominance, characterized by stability, prosperity, and cultural flourishing, a testament to his exceptional leadership and foresight. Xerxes I, son of Darius the Great, ascended to the throne in 486 BCE, inheriting an empire at its zenith, yet fraught with internal strife and external threats. His reign is marked by audacious military campaigns, particularly the ill-fated invasion of Greece, which would ultimately define his legacy. Xerxes' decision to march against the Greeks stemmed from a complex web of personal ambition, geopolitical strategy, and a desire to avenge his father's earlier defeats. Yet, this campaign revealed not only the limits of Persian power but also the vulnerabilities within the empire's vast structure. Upon assuming the throne, Xerxes inherited a simmering rebellion in Egypt, where discontent had festered under Darius's rule. Determined to assert his authority, Xerxes swiftly crushed the uprising, reinstalling Persian control with brutal efficiency. This early success emboldened him, reinforcing his belief in his divine right to expand the empire's boundaries. By 4080 BCE, Xerxes had amassed an unprecedented army, said by ancient historians like Herodotus to number in the millions, though modern estimates suggest a more plausible figure of around 200,000 to 300,000 to 300,000 troops. Accompanied by a massive fleet, Xerxes launched his campaign into Europe, aiming to subjugate the fractious Greek city-states and extend Persian dominion across the Aegean. The logistical feats required to sustain such an expedition were staggering. Engineers constructed a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, linking Asia and Europe, while supply lines stretched thousands of miles to feed and equip the advancing forces. This mobilization demonstrated the empire's organizational prowess, but also exposed its vulnerabilities. The sheer scale of the operation strained resources, and the reliance on subject populations for manpower created fissures within the empire. Many of the soldiers conscripted from conquered territories harbored little loyalty to the Persian cause, undermining morale and cohesion. The invasion began with apparent success. The Persians swept through Thrace and Macedon, forcing local rulers to submit or flee. At Thermopylae, however, Xerxes encountered unexpected resistance. A small coalition of Greek forces, led by King Leonidas of Sparta, held the narrow pass against overwhelming odds. For 3 days, the Greeks inflicted heavy casualties on the Persian army, buying precious time for their allies to prepare defenses elsewhere. Though Leonidas and his men were eventually overwhelmed, their stand became a symbol of defiance that resonated across Greece and galvanized opposition to Persian rule. The turning point came at Salamis, where the Persian navy suffered a devastating defeat. Xerxes had hoped to crush the Greek fleet in the confined waters of the strait, but the Greeks, under the command of Themistocles, lured the larger Persian vessels into a trap. The resulting battle saw the Persian ships collide and founder, unable to maneuver effectively. Humiliated and fearing further losses, Xerxes retreated to Asia, leaving behind a contingent of troops under his general Mardonius to continue the campaign. The following year, at Plataea, the Persians suffered another crushing defeat, effectively ending their aspirations in Greece. These military setbacks had profound implications for the Persian Empire. While the core territories remained intact, the invasions exposed weaknesses that would haunt future generations. The reliance on conscripted troops undermined battlefield effectiveness, while the logistical strain drained resources and bred resentment among subject peoples. Moreover, the failure to subdue Greece shattered the aura of invincibility that had long surrounded the empire. For the first time, the Persian juggernaut appeared vulnerable, emboldening neighboring states and inspiring dissent within its borders. Internally, Xerxes's reign was marked by increasing authoritarianism and paranoia. Frustrated by his failures abroad, he turned inward, tightening his grip on the empire through harsher taxation and stricter enforcement of loyalty. This approach alienated key factions, including the nobility and provincial governors, who grew disillusioned with his leadership. In 405 BCE, Xerxes was assassinated in a palace conspiracy orchestrated by his own courtiers, a grim testament to the erosion of trust and stability within the imperial administration. Xerxes's legacy is one of contradiction. On the one hand, his reign epitomized the heights of Persian ambition, showcasing the empire's capacity to mobilize vast resources and project power across continents. On the other hand, his military failures underscored the fragility of imperial unity and the dangers of overextension. The invasions of Greece not only tarnished Persian prestige, but also sowed seeds of discord that would plague the empire in the centuries to come. As the dust settled on the Greco-Persian wars, it became clear that the age of unbridled expansion had passed, and the Persian Empire must now contend with the challenges of maintaining its vast dominion in an increasingly hostile world. After the tumultuous reign of Xerxes, the Persian Empire stood at a crossroads, its once unshakable foundations shaken by military defeats, internal conspiracies, and widespread discontent. Into this fractured landscape stepped Artaxerxes, a ruler whose name would come to signify resilience, diplomacy, and the painstaking effort to rebuild what had been lost. Ascending the throne in 465 BCE following the assassination of his father, Artaxerxes inherited an empire riddled with instability. Yet his steady hand and pragmatic approach would lay the groundwork for a fragile but enduring peace. Artaxerxes' early years as king were marked by relentless challenges. The assassination of Xerxes had not only stripped the empire of its leader, but also exposed deep fissures within the royal court and provincial administrations. Rival factions vied for influence, and several satrapies, sensing weakness, began to test the limits of their autonomy. Chief among these rebellions was the uprising led by Megabyzus, a trusted general who had played a pivotal role in quelling the Egyptian revolt under Xerxes. Initially loyal, Megabyzus turned against the crown when he perceived Artaxerxes' policies as overly harsh. The rebellion spread quickly, drawing in disgruntled nobles and local leaders who sought to exploit the empire's vulnerabilities. To counter this wave of dissent, Artaxerxes adopted a dual strategy of military suppression and diplomatic reconciliation, recognizing that brute force alone could not restore order. He dispatched his armies to subdue key rebellions while simultaneously engaging in negotiations to win back loyalty. His handling of the Megabyzus affair exemplifies this balanced approach. Rather than executing the rebel leader, Artaxerxes pardoned him, restoring his position and incorporating him into the imperial administration. This act of clemency sent a powerful message. The emperor valued stability over vengeance, and those who submitted would be rewarded with leniency. Beyond quelling rebellions, Artaxerxes focused on rebuilding the empire's internal structures. He reorganized the satrapal system, appointing loyal governors and instituting stricter oversight to prevent abuses of power. Taxation policies were revised to alleviate the burden on subject populations, fostering goodwill and reducing the likelihood of unrest. Artaxerxes also invested heavily in infrastructure, repairing roads, fortifications, and irrigation systems that had fallen into disrepair. These efforts not only improved connectivity within the empire but also stimulated economic recovery, laying the foundation for renewed prosperity. Perhaps Artaxerxes' greatest achievement, however, was his success in navigating the complex web of international relations. The Greco-Persian Wars had left a legacy of animosity between the Persian Empire and the Greek city-states, but Artaxerxes recognized that outright confrontation was unsustainable. Instead, he pursued a policy of détente, seeking to neutralize potential threats through diplomacy rather than warfare. One of his most notable diplomatic triumphs was the Peace of Callias, a treaty negotiated with Athens in the mid-5th century BC. While the exact terms of the agreement remain debated, it is widely believed to have secured Persian withdrawal from the Aegean in exchange for Athenian recognition of Persian sovereignty over Asia Minor. This arrangement, while imperfect, allowed both powers to focus on internal consolidation rather than perpetual conflict. Artaxerxes' diplomatic acumen extended beyond Greece. He cultivated alliances with smaller states along the empire's periphery, offering protection and trade privileges in exchange for loyalty. In Egypt, where anti-Persian sentiment ran high, he adopted a conciliatory approach, granting concessions to local elites and promoting cultural integration. These efforts helped stabilize one of the empire's most volatile regions, ensuring that Egypt remained a valuable contributor to Persian wealth and power. Despite these successes, Artaxerxes' reign was not without its limitations. The empire's vast size and diversity made it impossible to address every issue simultaneously, and some regions continued to simmer with unrest. The satrapal system, though reformed, remained prone to corruption and inefficiency, requiring constant vigilance to prevent abuses. Moreover, the lingering scars of previous military defeats cast a shadow over Persian prestige, complicating efforts to project strength abroad. Nevertheless, Artaxerxes' ability to navigate these challenges with pragmatism and restraint ensured that the empire did not collapse under its own weight. By the end of his 40-year reign, Artaxerxes had achieved what many thought impossible: the restoration of stability to an empire teetering on the brink of chaos. His legacy was one of resilience and adaptability, qualities that would prove essential in the years to come. Under his leadership, the Persian Empire transitioned from a period of crisis to one of cautious renewal, setting the stage for future rulers to build upon his achievements. Though the specter of decline loomed on the horizon, Artaxerxes' reign demonstrated that even in the face of adversity, the empire could endure if guided by wisdom and foresight. The Persian Empire, under the stewardship of its successive rulers, evolved into a vibrant tapestry of cultures, religions, and philosophies, marking it not only as a political powerhouse, but also as a crucible of cultural synthesis. This era witnessed an unprecedented flourishing of arts, architecture, and religious practices, which not only enriched the empire internally, but also influenced the broader ancient world. Artistically, the Persian Empire was renowned for its opulent palaces and intricate artworks. Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, exemplified Persian architectural prowess with its colossal columns, detailed bas-reliefs, and majestic staircases that depicted scenes of tribute and homage from various conquered peoples. These artistic endeavors were not merely decorative. They were symbolic representations of the empire's unity and the king's divine right to rule. The fusion of styles from Greek and Egyptian to Mesopotamian highlighted the empire's inclusive approach to culture, where art served as a bridge connecting disparate traditions. Religiously, the Persian Empire was revolutionary. Zoroastrianism, the empire's official religion, preached a dualistic worldview centered around the eternal struggle between good, Ahura Mazda, and evil, Engra Manu. This faith profoundly influenced Persian ethics and governance, advocating truth, righteousness, and environmental stewardship. However, what set the Persian rulers apart was their policy of religious tolerance. Conquered peoples were allowed to practice their indigenous beliefs, a stark contrast to the forced conversions seen in other empires. This tolerance fostered a rich religious diversity, where Judaism, Hinduism, and later, nascent forms of Buddhism and Christianity coexisted alongside Zoroastrianism. The empire's openness to philosophical exchange also played a crucial role in its cultural evolution. Scholars and thinkers from across the empire engaged in dialogues that transcended traditional boundaries. Greek philosophers, Indian mystics, and Persian magi exchanged ideas about ethics, metaphysics, and governance. This intellectual ferment led to significant advancements in fields such as astronomy, medicine, and mathematics. The establishment of libraries and centers of learning in cities like Babylon and Susa further catalyzed this knowledge exchange, making the Persian Empire a hub of ancient scholarship. The impact of this cultural and religious synthesis extended far beyond the empire's borders. Persian ideals of governance, infused with ethical considerations and a sense of cosmic order derived from Zoroastrian teachings, influenced neighboring civilizations. The concept of a universal empire, where diverse cultures coexist under a single ruler, inspired later empires such as the Romans and the Byzantines. Moreover, the Persian emphasis on justice and moral integrity left an indelible mark on subsequent legal and philosophical systems, underscoring the enduring legacy of Persian thought. In essence, the cultural and religious fabric of the Persian Empire was a dynamic mosaic, woven with threads of inclusivity, tolerance, and intellectual curiosity. This unique blend not only defined the empire's identity, but also laid foundational stones for future civilizations, demonstrating the transformative power of cultural synthesis in shaping human history. As the Persian Empire entered the latter half of the 5th century BCE, the initial vibrancy and cohesion that had characterized its golden age began to wane. The empire, once a paragon of unity and strength, found itself grappling with internal divisions and mounting external pressures that steadily eroded its foundations. These challenges were multifaceted, stemming from a combination of succession disputes, economic strain, and the resurgence of regional powers eager to reclaim lost ground. Together, these factors signaled the beginning of a gradual but inexorable decline. One of the most destabilizing forces within the empire was the recurring issue of succession. The Persian monarchy, though hereditary, lacked a clear and consistent mechanism for determining heirs. Rivalry among princes and court factions often erupted into violent power struggles, weakening the central authority and creating opportunities for rebellion. For instance, the death of Artaxerxes I in 424 BCE triggered a brief but intense civil war between his sons, Xerxes II and Sogdianus, each backed by competing noble houses. Although Xerxes II ultimately prevailed, the conflict exposed the fragility of the imperial succession process and sowed distrust among the elite. Subsequent rulers, such as Darius II and Artaxerxes II, faced similar challenges, with their reigns marked by plots, betrayals, and attempts to usurp the throne. These internal fractures not only diverted attention from governance, but also undermined the legitimacy of the ruling dynasty. Economic strain compounded the empire's woes, as decades of military campaigns and extravagant building projects had depleted the royal treasury. Heavy taxation, imposed to fund these endeavors, placed a growing burden on the empire's subject populations. Farmers, artisans, and merchants alike struggled under the weight of levies, leading to widespread discontent. In regions like Egypt and Babylonia, where resentment toward Persian rule had long simmered, economic hardship fueled uprisings that the central government struggled to suppress. The logistical challenges of managing such a vast and diverse empire further exacerbated the problem. Satraps, tasked with collecting taxes and maintaining order, often exploited their positions for personal gain, enriching themselves at the expense of the crown and exacerbating tensions between the provinces and the imperial center. Externally, the Persian Empire faced renewed threats from neighboring powers that sought to capitalize on its internal weaknesses. In the West, the Greek city-states, having repelled Persian invasions during the Greco-Persian Wars, emerged as formidable rivals. The Peloponnesian War, 4031–40 fought between Athens and Sparta, drew Persian involvement as both sides sought alliances and subsidies. While the Persians initially supported Sparta, their interference in Greek affairs often backfired, as shifting allegiances and broken promises undermined their influence. By the time the war ended, the Persian Empire had expended significant resources with little to show for it, leaving its western frontier vulnerable to further encroachments. To the east, the empire confronted the rising power of the nomadic tribes of Central Asia, particularly the Scythians and the Massagetae. These groups, skilled horsemen and raiders, posed a persistent threat to the empire's eastern provinces. Efforts to subdue them through military expeditions frequently ended in costly stalemates, as the terrain and mobility of the nomads neutralized the advantages of Persian infantry and siege tactics. Meanwhile, in the south, Egypt repeatedly asserted its independence, rebelling against Persian rule in 14. Although Artaxerxes III managed to reconquer Egypt in 3043 BCE, the prolonged conflict drained Persian resources and diverted attention from other pressing issues. The cumulative effect of these internal and external pressures was a gradual erosion of Persian dominance. Provincial governors, emboldened by the weakening central authority, began to act with increasing autonomy, sometimes even allying with foreign powers against the empire. Trade routes, once bustling with activity, became less secure as banditry and regional conflicts disrupted commerce. The empire's famed infrastructure, including the royal road, fell into disrepair due to neglect and lack of funds. These developments not only diminished the empire's economic vitality, but also weakened its ability to project power and maintain control over its vast territories. Perhaps most ominously, the empire's struggles coincided with the rise of a new and aggressive force on the horizon, Macedonia. Under the leadership of Philip II and later his son Alexander the Great, Macedonia emerged as a unified and expansionist state. The Macedonian kings, keenly aware of the Persian Empire's vulnerabilities, began to envision a campaign to dismantle what remained of the once mighty empire. By the time Alexander crossed into Asia in 3034 BCE, the Persian Empire was already a shadow of its former self, its defenses brittle, and its leadership divided. In this context, the decline of the Persian Empire was not a sudden collapse, but rather a slow unraveling, driven by a confluence of internal weaknesses and external threats. Succession disputes sapped the strength of the monarchy, economic strain alienated its subjects, and regional powers chipped away at its peripheries. While the empire still retained much of its territory and resources, its ability to respond effectively to challenges had been severely compromised. The stage was set for the final chapter of its history, as the forces of change gathered momentum and prepared to sweep away the remnants of Persian hegemony. The year 3034 BCE marked the beginning of the end for the Persian Empire, as Alexander the Great, the ambitious young king of Macedonia, crossed the Hellespont with an army of seasoned warriors and a vision of conquest. What followed was a series of battles and strategic maneuvers that would culminate in the dismantling of one of history's most formidable empires. Alexander's campaign against the Persians was not merely a clash of armies but a collision of ideologies. Between the centralized, bureaucratic structure of the Persian Empire and the dynamic, adaptive leadership of a man driven by an insatiable hunger for glory. Alexander's first major engagement with the Persians occurred at the Battle of Granicus in May 3034 BCE. The Persian forces, led by local satraps and reinforced by Greek mercenaries, attempted to halt the Macedonian advance near the banks of the Granicus River. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's phalanx formation, combined with the devastating charges of his companion cavalry, broke through the Persian lines with remarkable speed. The victory not only secured a foothold in Asia Minor but also demonstrated the superiority of Macedonian tactics over the traditional Persian reliance on massed infantry and chariots. The loss at Granicus sent shockwaves through the Persian Empire, as it became clear that Alexander was no ordinary adversary. The next decisive confrontation came at Issus in 3033 BCE, where Alexander faced the Persian king Darius III himself. Darius had assembled a massive army, determined to crush the Macedonian upstart and restore Persian prestige. However, the narrow coastal plain near Issus favored Alexander's compact, highly disciplined forces. During the battle, Alexander personally led a daring charge that shattered the Persian center, forcing Darius to flee the field in panic. The capture of Darius's family, including his mother, wife, and children, further humiliated the Persian royal house and underscored the vulnerability of its leadership. Despite treating Darius's family with respect, a calculated gesture to win favor among Persian subjects, Alexander's victory at Issus irreparably damaged the empire's morale. The final blow came at Gaugamela in 3031 BCE, one of the most pivotal battles in ancient history. Aware of Alexander's tactical brilliance, Darius chose a vast, open plain near the Tigris River to maximize the numerical advantage of his army, which included war elephants and scythed chariots. Yet, Alexander's genius lay in his ability to adapt. Using feigned retreats and flanking maneuvers, he outmaneuvered the Persian forces, creating chaos in their ranks. Once again, Darius fled the battlefield, abandoning his troops and effectively sealing the fate of his empire. With the road to Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis now open, Alexander marched unopposed into the heart of the Persian Empire. The fall of Persepolis in early 330 BCE symbolized the definitive end of Persian hegemony. Alexander's forces sacked and burned the ceremonial capital, an act often interpreted as retribution for Xerxes' destruction of Athens during the Greco-Persian Wars. While the fire may have been accidental, its psychological impact was undeniable. The Persian Empire, once a beacon of power and sophistication, had been brought to its knees. Darius III, reduced to fleeing from one province to another, was eventually betrayed and killed by his own satraps, leaving Alexander uncontested as the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen. The aftermath of Alexander's conquest was both dramatic and transformative. The Persian administrative system, which had sustained the empire for centuries, was largely dismantled, replaced by a hybrid model that blended Persian bureaucracy with Macedonian military governance. Many Persian officials retained their positions, serving under Macedonian overlords, while others were displaced entirely. The satrapal system, once a hallmark of Persian efficiency, was restructured to reduce the autonomy of provincial governors and ensure loyalty to the new regime. Culturally, the conquest marked the beginning of the Hellenistic era, as Greek language, art, and philosophy spread across the former Persian territories. Cities like Alexandria in Egypt and Antioch in Syria became centers of Hellenistic culture, blending Greek and Persian traditions in unprecedented ways. Yet, this cultural synthesis came at a cost. The Persian identity, once defined by its unique blend of Zoroastrian spirituality, imperial grandeur, and multicultural inclusivity, began to fade under the weight of Greek dominance. For many Persians, the loss of their empire was not just a political defeat, but a profound existential rupture. Alexander's untimely death in 33 BCE further complicated the legacy of his conquest. Without a clear successor, his vast empire fragmented into rival kingdoms ruled by his generals, collectively known as the Diadochi. The Seleucid Empire, founded by Seleucus the Nicator, inherited the bulk of the former Persian territories, but it never fully replicated the cohesion or longevity of its predecessor. Over time, the Seleucids faced challenges from native revolts, Parthian incursions, and Roman expansion, gradually losing control of the lands once ruled by the Achaemenids. For the Persian people, the fall of their empire was a moment of profound reflection. The rapid collapse of a state that had endured for over 2 centuries raised questions about the nature of power, the fragility of empires, and the enduring legacy of their civilization. While the Achaemenid dynasty was gone, its influence persisted in subtle ways, shaping the cultural and political landscapes of the regions it had once dominated. The rise of the Parthian and Sasanian empires, centuries later, would draw inspiration from the Persian past, reviving elements of its administrative and cultural heritage. In the end, the fall of the Persian Empire was not merely the result of Alexander's military prowess, but a culmination of internal weaknesses and external pressures that had been festering for decades. The empire's inability to adapt to changing circumstances, coupled with the charisma and determination of its conqueror, sealed its fate. Yet, the story of the Persian Empire did not end with its fall. It lived on in the memories of those who had witnessed its splendor and in the shadows of the empires that followed. Its rise and fall remain a testament to the complexities of human ambition, the impermanence of power, and the enduring quest for unity in a fragmented world. The Persian Empire, despite its eventual fall, left an indelible mark on the tapestry of human history. Its influence permeated various aspects of subsequent empires, cultures, and governance systems, echoing through the corridors of time well into the modern era. From the administrative innovations of the Achaemenid dynasty to the cultural and religious syntheses that flourished under its rule, the Persian legacy is a testament to the enduring power of integration and adaptation. In the realm of governance, the Persian model of centralized bureaucracy served as a blueprint for future empires. The division of the empire into satrapies, each overseen by a governor who reported directly to the emperor, highlighted an early form of federal governance. This system not only ensured efficient management of vast territories, but also allowed for local autonomy, a principle that would later be adopted by the Roman Empire, and even find echoes in modern federal systems. The use of standardized weights, measures, and currency under Darius the Great facilitated trade and economic stability, setting precedents for economic policies in subsequent civilizations. Culturally, the Persian Empire was a crucible of synthesis, where diverse traditions and philosophies mingled and evolved. The empire's policy of religious tolerance, particularly evident in its treatment of Zoroastrianism alongside other faiths, influenced later empires' approaches to multiculturalism and pluralism. This ethos of tolerance and inclusivity can be seen in the policies of the Ottoman and Mughal empires, which similarly embraced religious and cultural diversity within their realms. Moreover, the Persian emphasis on art and architecture, epitomized by the grandeur of Persepolis, inspired aesthetic movements across Eurasia, influencing everything from the Greco-Roman architectural styles to the intricate designs of Islamic art. The Persian Empire's impact on global politics and culture did not wane with its decline. Instead, it morphed and adapted, continuing to influence through the ages. The Silk Road, a network of trade routes that connected East and West, owes much to the Persian infrastructure and the empire's role in fostering connections between distant civilizations. This ancient trade network not only facilitated the exchange of goods but also of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, laying the groundwork for globalization long before the term was coined. Furthermore, the Persian narrative of rise and fall has been a source of historical reflection and literary inspiration. The works of Greek historians like Herodotus, who chronicled the Greco-Persian Wars, have shaped Western perceptions of the East, embedding the Persian tale into the collective consciousness of Europe. These narratives, filled with tales of grandeur and tragedy, have inspired countless works of literature, theater, and film, perpetuating the Persian legacy in popular culture. In the modern era, the lessons drawn from the Persian Empire's history continue to inform discussions on governance, cultural integration, and the sustainable management of diverse societies. The empire's strategies for maintaining unity amidst diversity offer valuable insights for contemporary nations grappling with similar challenges. Moreover, the Persian emphasis on justice, as enshrined in Zoroastrian ethics, resonates in modern discourses on human rights and ethical governance. Thus, the Persian Empire, though fallen, remains a towering figure in the annals of history. Its legacy, woven into the very fabric of human civilization, continues to influence and inspire. From the corridors of ancient palaces to the modern-day chambers of governance, the echoes of Persia remind us of the intricate dance of power, culture, and legacy that defines our shared human journey. The story of the Persian Empire is not merely a chronicle of conquests and collapses. It is a profound meditation on the cyclical nature of power, the fragility of even the most formidable institutions, and the enduring importance of adaptability in the face of change. From its meteoric rise under Cyrus the Great, to its dramatic fall at the hands of Alexander, the empire's trajectory encapsulates universal truths about the human condition, truths that resonate across millennia and remain relevant to the present day. At its height, the Persian Empire embodied the zenith of human ambition. Its rulers, from Cyrus to Darius and beyond, crafted a state that was not only vast in scope but also innovative in governance. The creation of the satrapal system, the standardization of currency, and the construction of monumental infrastructure like the Royal Road were not just feats of administration but acts of vision. They demonstrated an understanding that true power lies not in domination alone, but in the ability to integrate, connect, and sustain. Yet, the same mechanisms that enabled the empire's rise also sowed the seeds of its decline. The rigidity of the satrapal system, once a tool of efficiency, became a liability as provincial governors grew increasingly autonomous and resistant to central authority. Similarly, the empire's reliance on conscripted armies and subject populations underscored its structural vulnerabilities, exposing the fragility of unity enforced by force rather than genuine allegiance. These paradoxes serve as reminders that systems designed for stability can become instruments of decay if they fail to evolve with changing circumstances. The Persian Empire's fall offers equally compelling lessons about the impermanence of power. For all its might, the empire could not withstand the convergence of internal strife and external pressures. Succession disputes, economic strain, and the resurgence of regional powers revealed that even the most imposing edifices of human endeavor are susceptible to collapse. The empire's inability to adapt to the shifting geopolitical landscape, whether through overextension in Greece or underestimation of emerging threats like Macedonia, highlights the peril of complacency in leadership. History teaches us that power, no matter how absolute it may seem, is always contingent upon the interplay of internal cohesion and external dynamics. When these elements fall out of balance, the consequences can be catastrophic. Yet, amidst the ruins of the Persian Empire lies a deeper lesson about resilience and reinvention. The empire's legacy did not vanish with its fall. Instead, it endured in the cultural, administrative, and philosophical frameworks that shaped subsequent civilizations. The Seleucid and Parthian empires, as well as the later Sasanian dynasty, drew inspiration from Persian traditions, adapting them to new context and challenges. This continuity underscores the idea that while empires may crumble, their contributions to human progress often persist in unforeseen ways. It is a testament to the enduring power of ideas and institutions to transcend the limitations of their creators. From a modern perspective, the rise and fall of the Persian Empire holds particular relevance in an era defined by rapid change and global interconnectedness. Today's leaders, whether in politics, business, or technology, face challenges not unlike those confronted by the Achaemenid kings. The need for adaptability, inclusivity, and foresight remains as critical now as it was then. Just as the Persian Empire thrived when it embraced diversity and innovation, so too do contemporary societies flourish when they prioritize collaboration and flexibility. Conversely, the empire's decline serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rigidity, overreach, and internal discord, lessons that resonate in an age where polarization and resource strain threaten to destabilize even the most advanced systems. The Persian Empire's story also invites reflection on the ethical dimensions of power. Its rulers, particularly Cyrus the Great, were celebrated not only for their military achievements but also for their principles of tolerance and justice. The Cyrus cylinder, often regarded as an early charter of human rights, symbolizes a vision of governance rooted in respect for cultural and religious diversity. This approach stands in stark contrast to the coercive tactics employed by many of history's empires, underscoring the enduring value of ethical leadership. In a modern context, where debates about equity, inclusion, and governance dominate public discourse, the Persian legacy reminds us that true power is not measured solely by territorial conquest or economic dominance, but by the ability to foster trust, unity, and shared purpose among diverse populations. Moreover, the empire's eventual collapse underscores the importance of humility in leadership. Despite their unparalleled achievements, the Persian kings were ultimately unable to prevent the unraveling of their domain. Their failures serve as a poignant reminder that no institution, however mighty, is immune to the forces of change. This humbling realization is particularly pertinent in an era where technological advancements and geopolitical shifts are reshaping the global order at an unprecedented pace. Leaders today must grapple with the same fundamental questions that confronted the Persian rulers. How do we balance ambition with sustainability? How do we navigate the tension between central authority and local autonomy? And how do we ensure that our actions align with the long-term well-being of the communities we serve? Finally, the Persian Empire's legacy offers a broader perspective on the human experience itself. Its rise and fall mirror the cycles of growth and decline that define all civilizations, from ancient Mesopotamia to modern nation-states. These cycles are not merely historical patterns but reflections of humanity's perpetual struggle to reconcile competing impulses between unity and diversity, innovation and tradition, ambition and restraint. The Persian Empire, in its grandeur and vulnerability, embodies the dualities that shape our collective journey through time. It challenges us to confront the impermanence of our creations, while celebrating the enduring impact of our contributions. In contemplating the lessons of the Persian Empire, we are reminded that history is not a static repository of past events, but a living dialogue between generations. The choices made by Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, and their successors continue to inform our understanding of power, governance, and human potential. Their triumphs inspire us to dream boldly and act decisively, while their failures caution us against hubris and complacency. As we stand on the shoulders of those who came before, we inherit not only their achievements, but also their struggles, a shared legacy that calls upon us to learn, adapt, and strive for a better future. Thus, the story of the Persian Empire transcends its temporal and geographical boundaries, offering timeless insights into the nature of power, the fragility of institutions, and the resilience of human ingenuity. It is a narrative that invites us to reflect on our own place within the sweep of history, urging us to build bridges rather than walls, to embrace change rather than fear it, and to leave behind a legacy that honors both the aspirations and the vulnerabilities of the human spirit. In doing so, we honor the memory of those who once stood atop the world, reminding ourselves that the true measure of greatness lies not in the heights we achieve but in the enduring impact we leave on the lives of others. In the quiet stillness of a library nestled in the heart of modern-day Tehran, Dr. Farah Navid sat hunched over a weathered manuscript, her fingers tracing the faded ink of ancient Persian texts. A historian by profession and a dreamer by nature, Farah had spent decades studying the rise and fall of the Persian Empire, piecing together fragments of its storied past. Yet, tonight was different. As she deciphered the final lines of the manuscript, a peculiar sensation washed over her, an inexplicable pull, as though the centuries-old words were reaching out across time. Before she could process what was happening, the room dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow, and Farah found herself standing in the bustling streets of Persepolis during the reign of Darius the Great. The air was thick with the scent of spices and freshly baked bread, mingling with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares and artisans, hammering intricate designs into gold and silver. Towering columns of the Apadana Palace loomed in the distance, their surfaces adorned with bas-reliefs, depicting scenes of tribute and celebration. Farah marveled at the vibrancy of the city, its energy palpable even from afar. But what struck her most was the sense of unity amidst diversity, the harmonious coexistence of peoples from across the empire, each contributing to the mosaic of Persian civilization. As she wandered through the streets, Farah encountered a young scribe named Arash, whose curiosity mirrored her own. Arash invited her to join him in documenting the daily life of the empire, capturing everything from the intricacies of the royal road to the rituals performed at Zoroastrian fire temples. Together, they traveled to distant provinces, witnessing firsthand the innovations that held the empire together. Aqueducts channeling water to arid regions, standardized weights ensuring fair trade, and couriers racing along well-maintained roads to deliver messages across vast distances. Through Arash's eyes, Farah saw not just the mechanics of governance, but the human stories behind them. The farmers tending fields irrigated by Persian engineering, the merchants thriving under a unified currency system, and the scholars exchanging ideas in libraries funded by imperial patronage. But Farah's journey was not without its challenges. She soon discovered that the empire's prosperity masked underlying tensions. In Egypt, she listened to whispers of rebellion among locals resentful of heavy taxation. In Babylon, she witnessed priests decrying the erosion of traditional practices under Persian rule. Even within the royal court, factions vied for influence, their intrigues threatening to destabilize the delicate balance of power. These fractures deepened Farah's understanding of the empire's vulnerabilities, reinforcing the idea that its strength lay not in invincibility but in its capacity to adapt and integrate. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Persepolis, Farah attended a grand feast hosted by Darius himself. The king, seated on a throne adorned with precious gems, spoke passionately about his vision for the empire, a realm where justice prevailed, cultures flourished, and connectivity bridged. His words resonated deeply with Farah, who realized that the ideals driving the Persian Empire were not confined to its time. They were universal aspirations shared by all societies striving for harmony and progress. Inspired by this revelation, Farah resolved to bring these lessons back to her own era. When she returned to the present, she found herself holding the manuscript that had transported her to the past. Its pages now shimmered faintly, as if imbued with the essence of her journey. Determined to share what she had learned, Farah embarked on a mission to reframe the narrative of the Persian Empire, not as a relic of antiquity, but as a source of enduring wisdom. She wrote books, delivered lectures, and collaborated with artists to create immersive exhibits that brought the empire's legacy to life. Her efforts sparked renewed interest in Persian history, inspiring contemporary leaders to draw upon its principles of inclusivity, innovation, and resilience. Farah's reimagining of the Persian Empire extended beyond academia. She envisioned a future where technology and tradition coexisted symbiotically, much like the empire's blend of centralized authority and local autonomy. Drawing inspiration from the Royal Road, she proposed a global initiative to revitalize infrastructure, connecting remote communities, and fostering cross-cultural exchange. Inspired by the empire's policy of religious tolerance, she advocated for policies promoting interfaith dialogue and mutual respect. And echoing the collaborative spirit of Persepolis, she championed projects that united scientists, artists, and policymakers in solving pressing global challenges. Through Farah's lens, the Persian Empire became more than a chapter in history. It became a blueprint for the future. Its rise and fall served as a reminder that no society is immune to change, but also that every society possesses the tools to navigate it. By embracing the lessons of the past, Farah believed humanity could forge a path toward a more inclusive, sustainable, and interconnected world, a vision as bold and transformative as the empire that first inspired it. And so, in the quiet stillness of her library, surrounded by the echoes of a bygone era, Farah Nevid continued her work, weaving the threads of history into a tapestry of hope. For in the story of the Persian Empire, she had found not just a reflection of the past, but a beacon for the future, a testament to the enduring power of human creativity, adaptability, and aspiration. As Farah Nevid delved deeper into her mission to reinterpret the Persian Empire for a modern audience, she began to confront an unsettling truth. The empire's legacy was not universally revered. While its achievements in governance, culture, and innovation were undeniable, they existed alongside shadows that history had often glossed over. The same empire that championed tolerance and unity also bore the scars of conquest, exploitation, and resistance. These contradictions, long buried beneath the weight of imperial grandeur, demanded acknowledgement if the lessons of the past were to be fully understood. For Farah, this realization marked a turning point, a shift from celebrating the empire's triumphs to grappling with its complexities. The first shadow emerged as Pharaoh revisited the empire's expansionist policies. Cyrus the Great, often hailed as a paragon of enlightened leadership, had built his dominion through military conquest. The liberation of Babylon, immortalized in the Cyrus cylinder, was framed as an act of justice, yet it also served to consolidate Persian power. Similarly, Darius the Great's campaigns in Egypt, Thrace, and the Indus Valley brought wealth and resources to the empire, but at a cost. Local populations, though granted autonomy in cultural and religious practices, were still subject to heavy taxation and conscription. Resistance simmered beneath the surface, erupting periodically in rebellions that tested the empire's cohesion. Pharaoh came to see these uprisings not merely as isolated incidents, but as expressions of a deeper discontent, the tension between imperial ambition and local sovereignty. This tension was particularly evident in the case of Egypt. Under Persian rule, Egypt experienced periods of prosperity but also endured harsh repression. Artaxerxes III's reconquest of Egypt in 333 BCE was marked by brutality, with cities sacked and temples desecrated. Even during more stable periods, Egyptian elites chafed under Persian oversight, viewing their rulers as outsiders who failed to grasp the intricacies of their civilization. Pharaoh uncovered accounts of priests and scribes lamenting the erosion of traditional hierarchies and the imposition of foreign customs. These narratives challenged the notion of Persian inclusivity, revealing instead a system that often privileged Persian interests over those of its subjects. Pharaoh's exploration of the empire's darker aspects extended to its treatment of marginalized groups. While Zoroastrianism promoted ideals of justice and righteousness, the empire's social hierarchy remained rigidly stratified. Slavery, though less institutionalized than in some neighboring states, persisted as a feature of Persian society. Prisoners of war and debtors could find themselves reduced to servitude, their labor fueling the empire's monumental construction projects. Women, too, occupied a precarious position. Though certain queens and noblewomen wielded significant influence, Atassa, wife of Darius the Great, being a notable example, the majority of women lived lives constrained by patriarchal norms. Pharaoh wrestled with these contradictions, recognizing that the empire's progressive policies did not extend equally to all its inhabitants. Perhaps the most haunting shadow was the empire's ultimate fate. Despite its innovations and adaptability, the Persian Empire fell prey to internal fractures and external pressures. The succession disputes that plagued the Achaemenid dynasty exposed weaknesses in its political structure, while economic strain alienated key segments of the population. Regional powers, emboldened by Persian decline, seized opportunities to reclaim independence. When Alexander the Great swept across Asia Minor, his victories revealed how fragile the empire's foundations had become. Pharaoh reflected on the irony: an empire celebrated for its integration and connectivity ultimately succumbed to fragmentation and disconnection. Yet, even in its fall, the Persian Empire left behind legacies that defied simple categorization. Some of these legacies were constructive, shaping the course of subsequent civilizations. Others were cautionary, serving as reminders of the dangers inherent in unchecked ambition. Pharaoh found herself drawn to the stories of resilience that emerged in the empire's aftermath. In regions like Mesopotamia and Iran, Local traditions adapted and evolved, incorporating elements of Persian governance and culture. The Parthians and Sasanians, who later rose to prominence, drew inspiration from the Achaemenids, reviving aspects of their administrative and military systems. These continuities suggested that the empire's influence extended far beyond its temporal boundaries. To better understand these nuances, Farah embarked on a journey to visit sites associated with the empire's contested legacy. She traveled to Pasargadae, where Cyrus the Great lay entombed, his mausoleum standing as a testament to both his vision and his mortality. She walked among the ruins of Susa, once a vibrant center of trade and diplomacy, now reduced to fragments of brick and stone. At Persepolis, she paused before the towering columns of the Apadana Palace, imagining the feasts and ceremonies that had once animated the space. Each site offered a different perspective on the empire's dual nature, its capacity for creation and destruction, connection and division. Farah's travels culminated in a visit to Naqsh-e-Rustam, the necropolis where several Achaemenid kings were laid to rest. Carved into the rock face, their tombs bore inscriptions extolling their virtues and accomplishments. Yet, as Farah stood before these monuments, she felt the weight of their silences, the voices of those who had suffered under their rule, whose stories had been erased or marginalized. It was here that she resolved to weave these overlooked narratives into her work, ensuring that the Persian Empire's legacy would be understood in all its complexity. Returning to Tehran, Farah began crafting a new series of lectures and exhibitions that balanced celebration with critique. She highlighted the empire's contributions to governance, art, and philosophy while acknowledging its flaws and failures. Her presentations encouraged audiences to engage critically with history, asking difficult questions about power, identity, and responsibility. Through interactive displays and multimedia storytelling, she invited participants to step into the shoes of diverse historical figures, from Persian kings to rebellious satraps, from Greek mercenaries to Egyptian priests. By doing so, she sought to foster empathy and understanding, bridging the gap between past and present. Farah's efforts sparked intense debate within academic and public circles. Some praised her willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, arguing that a nuanced understanding of history was essential for addressing contemporary challenges. Others accused her of undermining national pride, suggesting that her critiques diminished the achievements of their ancestors. Undeterred, Farah embraced the controversy, viewing it as evidence of history's enduring relevance. If we cannot grapple with the shadows of our past, she argued, how can we hope to illuminate the path forward? In reimagining the Persian Empire, Farah had come to see it not as a monolith, but as a mosaic, a complex interplay of light and shadow, triumph and tragedy, unity and division. Its story was not one of unblemished greatness but of human striving, flawed yet aspirational. And in this recognition lay its true power, the ability to inspire reflection, dialogue, and growth. As Farah closed another chapter of her research, she knew that her journey was far from over. The shadows of Persepolis still lingered, inviting her and others to look closer, think deeper, and dream bigger. With the shadows of the Persian Empire firmly etched into her consciousness, Farah Navid turned her attention to a pressing question. What lessons could the ancient empire offer to a fragmented world grappling with its own crises of identity, governance, and sustainability? The parallels between then and now were striking. Just as the Persian Empire had faced challenges of diversity, resource management, and geopolitical instability, so too did modern societies contend with similar issues but on a global scale. Farah believed that the empire's successes and failures held valuable insights for navigating the complexities of the 21st century. One of the most salient lessons was the importance of inclusivity in governance. The Persian Empire's policy of allowing conquered peoples to retain their cultural and religious practices had fostered a degree of stability, albeit imperfect. Farah saw echoes of this approach in contemporary debates about multiculturalism and national identity. Nations struggling with ethnic and religious tensions could learn from the Persians' emphasis on accommodation rather than assimilation. However, she cautioned against romanticizing this model, noting that it had often masked underlying inequalities and resentments. True inclusivity, she argued, required not just tolerance but active efforts to address systemic disparities and empower marginalized voices. Another lesson stemmed from the empire's innovative infrastructure. The royal road, aqueducts, and standardized currency had facilitated communication, commerce, and connectivity across vast distances. In today's hyper-connected world, where digital networks span continents, the principles of accessibility and integration remained crucial. Farah envisioned a modern equivalent of the Royal Road, a global initiative to improve transportation, energy, and information infrastructure in underserved regions. Such projects, she believed, could bridge divides and create opportunities for collaboration, much as the Persian Empire had done millennia ago. Yet, Farah also recognized that infrastructure alone was insufficient without ethical leadership. The Persian kings had governed with varying degrees of wisdom and hubris, and their decisions had shaped the empire's trajectory. Farah drew parallels to modern leaders, whose choices carried profound implications for the planet and its people. She advocated for a return to the Zoroastrian ideals of justice and stewardship, urging policymakers to prioritize long-term well-being over short-term gains. Whether addressing climate change, economic inequality, or geopolitical conflict, Farah insisted that ethical considerations must guide decision-making. The empire's collapse offered perhaps the most sobering lesson: the fragility of even the most formidable institutions. The Persian Empire had thrived when it adapted to changing circumstances but faltered when it clung to outdated paradigms. Farah saw this dynamic mirrored in the struggles of modern organizations and governments, many of which resisted necessary reforms in favor of maintaining the status quo. She emphasized the need for adaptability, encouraging leaders to embrace innovation and experimentation while remaining grounded in core values. Change is inevitable, she often said, but how we respond to it determines whether we thrive or perish. Farah's reflections took on added urgency as she observed rising populism, nationalism, and polarization around the globe. These trends reminded her of the centrifugal forces that had weakened the Persian Empire, pulling it apart from within. To counteract such divisions, she proposed fostering a sense of shared purpose, a vision that transcended narrow identities and united humanity around common goals. Drawing inspiration from the empire's cosmopolitan ethos, she called for initiatives that celebrated diversity while emphasizing interconnectedness. Art, education, and technology, she argued, could serve as powerful tools for building bridges and cultivating empathy. To bring these ideas to life, Farah launched a multifaceted campaign aimed at translating historical lessons into actionable strategies. She collaborated with urban planners to design sustainable cities inspired by ancient Persian engineering. She partnered with educators to develop curricula that highlighted the empire's contributions to science, art, and governance. And she worked with activists to promote policies rooted in equity and environmental responsibility. Each project was infused with the spirit of the Persian Empire, a blend of pragmatism and idealism, tradition and innovation. Farah's efforts gained traction, attracting support from unlikely quarters. Business leaders saw value in her emphasis on long-term thinking and stakeholder engagement. Environmentalists embraced her call for sustainable practices modeled after ancient irrigation systems. Even politicians, wary of historical analogies, found merit in her focus on ethical leadership and inclusive governance. Together, they formed a coalition dedicated to applying the lessons of the Persian Empire to contemporary challenges. As momentum grew, Farah began organizing annual conferences titled Echoes of Empire, Reimagining Governance for a Connected World. These gatherings brought together scholars, policymakers, artists, and community organizers to explore how the Persian legacy could inform modern solutions. Panels discussed topics ranging from digital connectivity to cultural preservation, while workshops brainstormed practical applications of historical insights. Attendees left energized and equipped with new perspectives, ready to tackle the pressing issues of their time. Despite her growing influence, Farah remained acutely aware of the limitations of her work. History, she knew, was not a blueprint but a mirror, a reflection of human potential and frailty. The Persian Empire's rise and fall demonstrated that no society was immune to the forces of change, but it also showed that resilience lay in the ability to adapt and rebuild. Farah's ultimate goal was not to recreate the empire but to harness its legacy as a catalyst for transformation. In the twilight of her career, Farah stood atop a hill, overlooking Tehran, contemplating the road ahead. The city sprawled below her, a tapestry of old and new, tradition and progress. She thought of the countless individuals who had contributed to the Persian Empire's story: the kings and scribes, farmers and artisans, rebels and reformers. Their struggles and triumphs had shaped the course of history, leaving behind a legacy that continued to resonate. And now, it was her turn to carry that torch, ensuring that the echoes of empire would guide humanity toward a brighter future. Farah Navid's journey had always been one of synthesis, of weaving together disparate threads to form a coherent narrative. Her exploration of the Persian Empire had taken her from the heights of its glory to the depths of its decline, uncovering both its brilliance and its flaws. Along the way, she had grappled with profound questions about power, identity, and resilience, seeking to distill timeless wisdom from the annals of history. Now, as she approached the final chapter of her odyssey, Farah realized that her task was not merely to interpret the past, but to forge a bridge between it and the future, a bridge strong enough to bear the weight of humanity's aspirations. The culmination of her efforts materialized in the form of a visionary project, the Global Heritage Initiative. This ambitious undertaking aimed to revive the spirit of the Persian Empire, not as a literal restoration, but as a conceptual framework for addressing the challenges of the modern world. At its core was the belief that the principles of integration, innovation, and inclusivity could inspire transformative change. Farah envisioned the initiative as a living testament to the empire's legacy, channeling its lessons into tangible actions that benefited communities worldwide. The cornerstone of the Global Heritage Initiative was a network of cultural and educational hubs located in regions historically connected to the Persian Empire. These hubs, designed to resemble the architectural splendor of Persepolis and Pasargadae, would serve as centers for learning, dialogue, and collaboration. They would host exhibitions showcasing the empire's artistic and technological achievements, workshops fostering cross-cultural exchange, and forums addressing contemporary issues. By situating these hubs in places like Iran, Turkey, Egypt, and India, Farah hoped to honor the empire's geographic reach while promoting regional cooperation. Central to the initiative was the concept of adaptive heritage, the idea that historical legacies should evolve to meet present-day needs. Farah worked closely with architects, engineers, and conservationists to ensure that the hubs incorporated sustainable design principles. Solar panels, rainwater harvesting systems, and green roofs became integral features, echoing the empire's ingenuity in managing natural resources. Inside, cutting-edge technology enabled immersive experiences, allowing visitors to virtually explore ancient sites or participate in real-time discussions with peers across the globe. These innovations underscored the initiative's commitment to blending tradition with progress. Education lay at the heart of the project. Farah collaborated with universities and NGOs to develop interdisciplinary programs that linked history, science, and policy. Students learned about the Persian Empire's administrative systems and applied those insights to modern governance models. They studied ancient irrigation techniques and adapted them to combat water scarcity in arid regions. Through fieldwork and internships, participants engaged directly with communities, addressing challenges such as poverty, displacement, and environmental degradation. Farah believed that education was the key to unlocking humanity's collective potential, empowering individuals to become agents of change. The Global Heritage Initiative also sought to amplify marginalized voices, ensuring that the narrative of the Persian Empire, and history more broadly, was told from multiple perspectives. Farah established partnerships with indigenous groups, women's organizations, and grassroots movements, inviting them to contribute their stories and expertise. Oral histories, folk art, and traditional knowledge enriched the initiative's archives, offering alternative viewpoints that challenged dominant narratives. By centering these voices, Farah aimed to create a more inclusive and equitable understanding of the past. Perhaps the most ambitious aspect of the initiative was its focus on global connectivity. Inspired by the Royal Road, Farah spearheaded the creation of a digital platform called Pathways, designed to facilitate collaboration among researchers, policymakers, and activists. Users could access resources, share best practices, and coordinate efforts to tackle shared challenges. From climate action to refugee resettlement, Pathways provided a virtual space for problem-solving and solidarity. Farah viewed it as a modern incarnation of the empire's commitment to fostering connections across borders. The launch of the Global Heritage Initiative coincided with a renewed interest in Persian history, spurred by Farah's earlier work. Governments, corporations, and philanthropists rallied behind the project, recognizing its potential to drive positive change. UNESCO endorsed the initiative, hailing it as a model for preserving cultural heritage, while advancing sustainable development. Media outlets covered its progress extensively, sparking conversations about the role of history in shaping the future. Slowly but surely, the Persian Empire's legacy began to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond its original boundaries. For Farah, the initiative represented the culmination of a lifelong dream. Yet, she understood that it was only the beginning. The challenges facing humanity were vast and evolving, requiring constant vigilance and innovation. The Persian Empire's story taught her that no solution was permanent, no achievement absolute, storing light. But it also reminded her of humanity's boundless capacity for creativity, resilience, and renewal. As she stood amidst the inaugural ceremony of the first cultural hub, surrounded by colleagues and collaborators from around the world, Farah felt a deep sense of fulfillment and hope. Her gaze drifted upward, toward the horizon where sun met sky. The Persian Empire, once a beacon of power and possibility, had risen and fallen, leaving behind a legacy that continued to inspire. Now, through the Global Heritage Initiative, Farah had transformed that legacy into a living force, a bridge spanning centuries, connecting hearts and minds, and guiding humanity toward a brighter tomorrow. In that moment, she knew that the echoes of empire would never fade. They would simply evolve, carrying the dreams of the past into the promise of the future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the newly inaugurated cultural hub in Tehran, Farah Navid took a quiet moment to reflect. The air buzzed with the energy, scholars exchanging ideas, artists unveiling their creations, and children marveling at interactive exhibits that brought the Persian Empire's history to life. It was a scene she had envisioned for years, a convergence of past, present, and future, where humanity's shared heritage became a catalyst for innovation and unity. Yet, as she stood there amidst the hum of activity, Farah felt an unexpected pang of humility. For all her efforts, she knew that the true measure of her work would not be evident in her lifetime, but in the generations to come. The Global Heritage Initiative had already begun to take root, its tendrils spreading across continents. In Egypt, archaeologists worked alongside local communities to restore ancient waterways, blending traditional knowledge with modern engineering. In Central Asia, nomadic tribes collaborated with scientists to develop sustainable grazing practices inspired by ancient Persian land management techniques. In Greece, educators incorporated lessons from the Greco-Persian Wars into curricula focused on conflict resolution and diplomacy. Each project bore the imprint of Farah's vision, yet none were solely hers. They belonged to the countless individuals who had embraced the initiative's ethos and carried it forward in ways she could never have imagined. Farah often thought about the stories these projects would one day tell. She envisioned a young girl in rural Iran, discovering her ancestors' ingenuity through the restored qanats, underground irrigation channels that nourished her village. She pictured a student in India, tracing the threads of Zoroastrian philosophy in contemporary debates about ethics and sustainability. She imagined a leader in Europe, drawing inspiration from Cyrus the Great's policies of tolerance as they navigated the complexities of multicultural governance. These were the seeds of change, the ripples of a legacy that would continue long after she was gone. Yet, Farah also understood that the journey was far from complete. The challenges facing humanity, climate change, inequality, geopolitical instability were as daunting as ever. The Persian Empire's story reminded her that no society, no matter how advanced or ambitious, was immune to the forces of entropy. But it also offered hope, the possibility of renewal, adaptation, and resilience. The empire's rise and fall had shown that even in moments of decline, fragments of greatness could endure, waiting to be rediscovered and reimagined. This realization led Farah to embrace a new role, not as a creator, But as a steward, she began mentoring younger historians, activists, and innovators, encouraging them to build upon her work while forging their own paths. "History is not mine to own," she told them. "It belongs to everyone. My task is simply to light the way." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring many to view history not as a static relic, but as a dynamic force capable of shaping the future. One of her most cherished relationships was with a young woman named Layla, a graduate student whose research focused on the intersection of ancient Persian agricultural practices and modern food security. Layla had grown up in a small farming community near Shiraz, where tales of the empire's splendor were woven into everyday life. When she first met Farah, Layla was hesitant, unsure if her work mattered in the grand scheme of things. But Farah saw something in her, a spark of curiosity and determination, and encouraged her to pursue her passion. Under Farah's guidance, Layla developed a groundbreaking program that combined satellite imagery, soil analysis, and historical data to identify optimal locations for reviving ancient irrigation systems. Her pilot project transformed barren fields into fertile plots, revitalizing entire villages and earning international acclaim. As Layla accepted awards and delivered keynote speeches, she always credited Farah for believing in her when she doubted herself. "She taught me that history isn't just about looking back," Layla said during one such speech. "It's about finding wisdom in the past and using it to build a better tomorrow." Farah's influence extended beyond individual mentees. Through the Global Heritage Initiative, she fostered networks of collaboration that transcended borders and disciplines. Artists partnered with engineers, historians teamed up with environmentalists, and policymakers consulted with grassroots organizers. These partnerships yielded innovative solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems, proving that diversity of thought and experience was a source of strength rather than division. As the years passed, Farah's health began to decline, a natural consequence of a life lived with boundless passion and purpose. Yet, even as her body weakened, her spirit remained unyielding. She continued writing, lecturing, and advocating until the very end, determined to leave behind a legacy that others could carry forward. On the day she passed away, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. Leaders praised her vision, colleagues celebrated her intellect, and friends remembered her kindness. But perhaps the most poignant tribute came from an anonymous contributor to the Pathways platform. "Thank you for showing us that the echoes of empire are not whispers of the past, but calls to action for the future." In death, Farah joined the pantheon of those who had shaped the Persian Empire's enduring legacy, from Cyrus the Great to Darius the Builder, from anonymous scribes to rebellious satraps. Her name may not have been etched into stone like theirs, but her impact was no less profound. She had taken the fragments of a fallen empire and woven them into a tapestry of possibility, reminding the world that history was not a burden to bear but a gift to cherish. And so, the story of the Persian Empire continues, not as a relic of antiquity but as a living narrative, evolving with each generation that embraces its lessons. Its echoes reverberate in the corridors of power, the classrooms of academia, and the streets of ordinary life. They whisper of unity amidst diversity, of innovation born from necessity, and of resilience forged in the crucible of adversity. They remind us that while empires may rise and fall, the human spirit endures, forever seeking connection, meaning, and renewal. In the end, Farah Navid's greatest achievement was not the monuments she built or the accolades she received. It was the spark she ignited, a flame carried by countless hands, illuminating the path toward a brighter, more inclusive, and interconnected world. And so, the eternal echo lives on, bridging the gap between what was, what is, and what can be. For in the story of the Persian Empire, and in the hearts of those who remember it, lies the promise of eternity.